Welcome to Stillwater's Wreath Designs. Today I'm going to teach you 5 different ways to make a deco mesh, wreath, and door swag base. This tutorial is basically a set of 5 different recipes that you can use and update based on your creations, and they're all good for all seasons. You'll find a full materials and tools list for everything mentioned in these tutorials in the description below. Okay, let's start creating. How to add deco mesh cruffles into a pine swag base. The pine pieces within the swag are going to disappear within your creation, so you can truly use this method for all seasons. The widest part is the top of your swag and the point is the bottom. We're going to use 2 rolls of 10-inch deco mesh to build our base out, guys. And so I'm just going to use a solid 10-inch shimmery white, and then I'm going to use some glittery deco mesh that, as you unroll it, is actually fairly see-through, but it's a really cute base, and it looks like this once you unroll it. Super stinking cute. And there's no set rule on how many pieces of deco mesh you need for a swag, guys. They're all built a little bit differently, and it depends on how closely you put your deco mesh cruffles into the base. And so I always start out with 14 pieces in total of the deco mesh, and then if we need to add more, we can sure cut some more pieces. And so I'm going to cut 7 pieces of the white and 7 pieces of the red. And guys, I don't really measure my deco mesh. I find it quicker just to cut it without measuring. Of course, you're welcome to measure if you like. Each piece is going to be between 20 and 24 inches in length, and I just pull my arm out in front of me. I pull that deco mesh directly up and cut. So I know if my arm is essentially in the same place, every time I cut, those pieces will be nearly the same size. And again, 20 to 24 inches in length. We'll start out with 7 pieces of the white and 7 pieces of the red, and I'll meet you back here. Once you've got all of your deco mesh pieces cut, it's time to start creating deco mesh cruffles to add into our swag base. If you are new to working with deco mesh loves to fray. So anything we can do as creators to help reduce that fray is always ideal. And the cruffle method is great to help reduce that fray. So to make a deco mesh cruffle, you're just going to grab 1 piece of your deco mesh. You're going to lay it in your workstation, curl side up. I'm going to use my bolt cutters to lay in the middle of that deco mesh piece just to hold that guy in place. And I would also recommend that you have a chip clip or a clothespin to help with this process. And to make a cruffle, you're going to come to one end of your deco mesh, and we're going to roll that end 2 or 3 times in to make a cylindrical tube, or what we call a curl. And what that does is tuck away the raw edge of your deco mesh to help reduce the fray. Once you've curled that guy in 2 or 3 times, take your chip clip and just pinch it together in the middle to secure it. Then spin your deco mesh piece around and do the exact same thing on the opposite end, rolling it in 2 or 3 times. Once you've done that, it's time to ruffle our mesh. And so I'm going to press down on that curl with my thumbs to hold that guy in place. And then I'm going to use my 8 fingers to scrunch and gather or walk my deco mesh piece back into my hand. So I'm going to keep doing that all the way to the end of my piece. And then I'm going to release that clip. I'll pinch this guy in the middle, and we've just made our first cruffle. So essentially what a cruffle is, it's also known as a woodland ruffle, but basically it's a curl on each end and then the ruffle in the middle. You're going to come into your pine swag, and we're going to add cruffles starting at the top all the way down one side of our pine swag base to the very end, and then all the way back up. So we're going to take our cruffle. We'll find 2 neighboring pine ties. We're going to add this cruffle all the way down to the base between those 2 neighboring ties and give those ties a couple of tight twists. and that's going to hold our cruffle in place. Let's do one more together and then we'll speed ahead. So you're going to take your piece of deco mesh and lay it down in your work area. I'll place something heavy in the middle of that piece of mesh just to hold it in place. I'm going to curl that end 2 or 3 times to tuck away that raw edge and create my curl and secure it with my clip. I'll then spin my deco mesh piece around, curl that opposite end 2 or 3 times, remove my weight, and then I'm going to press down with my thumbs to hold that guy in place. And then with my other 8 fingers, I will walk that deco mesh back into my hand to create my cruffle. We'll release that clip and give that guy a pinch in the middle. Come back to your pine base and right underneath where we left off. Again, you'll find 2 neighboring pine ties. Place that cruffle all the way down at the base between those 2 ties and give those 2 ties a couple of tight twists. And we've just added our second cruffle. Go ahead and repeat this process all the way down your pine swag and then back up until it's fully loaded with your deco mesh cruffles. You very well may need to cut some additional pieces. That's totally fine. Make it as full as you want. And then I'll meet you back here. Now that we've got our swag fully loaded, I did end up needing to cut 2 additional pieces of deco mesh. So in total, I used 16 pieces, and look how nice and full our swag base is coming along. Now you can add your sign and embellishments. The Deco Mesh Poof and Double Curl Method. If you're new to wreath making, guys, this is what's called a work wreath form. And it comes to you just like this. And so this particular base is 15 inches in diameter. It's got 2 layers, the lower and the upper. These are what we call ties. And there are 18 ties in total on our work wreath frame. And so the first thing we need to do is put these guys where they belong. So on the upper level, just point those guys towards the center, like so. And then on the lower level, we're going to do just the opposite. We're going to point those guys outwards. Here we go. So your work wreath frame should look something like this. So today we're going to be doing the poof and double curl method. It's one of my favorite methods for wreath making when using deco mesh. If you're new to wreath making, guys, deco mesh loves to fray. So anything that we can do as creators to help reduce that fray is always ideal. We're going to be using 3 different colors of 10-inch deco mesh today. We'll be using a burlap colored, a shimmery white, and a shimmery navy. And we're going to start with the burlap colored. You'll also need a standard ruler. And the first layer to this process, guys, is to add poofs to our wreath base. That's step number 1. We're going to start on the lower level. It doesn't matter where you start at the lower level, because at this point our wreath doesn't have a top or bottom. So have your deco mesh, your tan deco mesh roll in your work area and curl side down. Just roll out a foot or so. And we need to get this anchored down into our wreath base. So at the edge, I want you to press down with your thumbs. Your thumbs will be staying stationary and your 8 fingers will be doing the work here. We're just going to crawl that mesh back into our hand. Just like so. And so now we've got this little bitty tail. So once you've got your little tail, then I want you to tuck that guy back underneath into your hands. And basically what that does is tuck away that raw edge of your deco mesh to, again, help prevent the fray. So keep a hold of that with your right hand and then come over to your wreath frame Add any set of ties here on the lower level and open them up into a wide V, and then take your Deco Mesh tail, place that all the way down to the base of the V of those ties, and give them 2 tight twists. And point them back outwards again. And so we've just anchored our Deco Mesh down to our frame. And it's time to start making some poofs. To make our poofs, we're going to take our ruler, lay your ruler on the most recent set of ties, come out to that 10-inch mark. And guys, no one's looking for perfection here. No one's going to be measuring your Deco Mesh. But identify that 10-inch mark and then scrunch and gather your mesh into your hand, just like we did earlier. Turn that right side out. And then you're going to come to your very next set of lower level ties, open them into a wide V, and place your Deco Mesh all the way down into the base of that V, and give it a couple of tight twists. And we just added our first lower level poof. Let's do one more together and then we'll speed ahead. So I'm going to place my ruler at the most recent set of ties that I've used, come out to that 10-inch mark, scrunch and gather that mesh into my hand, come to my very next set of ties on that lower level, open them into a wide V, and place that mesh all the way down to the base of that V, and give those ties a couple of tight twists. And we've just added our second poof. So go ahead and add your 10-inch poofs all the way around the lower level. And when you get to the last set of ties, I'll meet you back here. Okay, it's time to add our last lower level poof. And so we're going to follow that same method we've been doing, guys. Just take your ruler, place it on top of those ties, identify that 10-inch mark, scrunch and gather your mesh. And we're actually going to be adding this right on top of our starting point where we anchored down. So just carefully untwist those ties. As long as you're careful, I promise that mesh isn't going to go anywhere. So we're going to open those ties back up and lay this pinch of mesh right on top, all the way down to the base. And again, give it a couple of tight twists. And we've just added our last lower level poof. And so now it's time to jump to the upper level. And so what we're going to do to jump to the upper level, guys, is keep a hold of your mesh in your hand and pulling it tautly, come to that first set of ties on the upper level. And we're not going to make a poof here. We're just going to keep that mesh taut. And we're going to come in behind that set of ties and anchor down our mesh at the base of the V of those ties and give it a couple of tight twists. So as you can see here, we've jumped from the lower to the upper level. It's nice and taut, no poof. And now we're going to start adding poofs to the upper level. We're basically going to do the exact same thing that we did on the lower level, except our upper level poofs will only be 8-inch poofs. So you're going to take your ruler, place it on your most recent set of ties that you've used, identify that 8-inch mark, scrunch and gather that mesh, come to that very next set of upper level ties, open them into a wide V, place that Deco Mesh down at the base of the V, and give it 2 tight twists. And we've just added our first upper level poof. Go ahead and add your 8-inch poofs all the way around the upper level, and I'll meet you back here. Okay, it's time to add our last upper level poof. So we're going to place our ruler on the most recent set of ties that we've used and come out to that 8-inch mark. We'll scrunch and gather our mesh. And we're going to add this right on top of where we jumped our mesh from the lower to the upper. So again, just carefully untwist those ties and add that poof right on top of where we made that jump. pressing it all the way down to the base of your ties, and then give those ties a couple of tight twists. We've just added our last upper level poof. And so now we need to cut off the excess bit of our mesh. And so you want to be careful here, guys, that you don't accidentally cut your poofs or something that you don't intend to. And what I do to help with that is grab that excess mesh, and I place my hand between my poof and the mesh, and then I leave about an inch, inch and a half or so of that mesh just to make sure it doesn't come undone. No one's going to see it. And carefully cut that mesh away. Just like that. Now that we've added all of our poofs into our frame, as you can see, we're getting some great coverage, but it's still pretty light and airy, and we want that coverage to be more dense. So it's on to step number 2 with our deco mesh. Go ahead and set your wreath frame off to the side. And now we're going to prepare our white and our navy deco mesh. So the next step to our wreath base is to add deco mesh curls. Remember, we've got 18 sets of ties on our entire wreath base. And we're going to add 1 white curl and 1 navy curl to every single set of ties. So we're going to need 18 pieces of the white and 18 pieces of the navy, and those pieces need to be cut at 10 inches. I'm going to use my self-healing mat and my rotary cutter, which if you are new to wreath making, guys, and you've not yet seen the rotary cutter, it basically works like a pizza cutter, and it allows you to cut your deco mesh quickly and with nice clean lines. They're pretty inexpensive. I'll leave a link for you below. If you don't have a rotary cutter and a self-healing mat, just go ahead and use your scissors and a ruler. So you're just going to roll your pieces out and cut them at 10 inches in length. And you're going to need 18 pieces of each. So go ahead and cut your deco mesh pieces, and I'll meet you back here. Now that we've got our deco mesh 10-inch pieces cut, go ahead and grab a clothespin or a chip clip and your wreath base. And we're going to add our curls into our wreath base. So curls are basically just like what they sound, guys. So grab a piece of deco mesh and lay it in your workstation curl side up. And you're just going to roll that guy into a cylindrical tube, or what we call in the wreath making world, curls. Just like so. And so it's basically about an inch in diameter there in the center. And then of course it flails a bit at the ends. You'll take your clip and just pinch that guy in the center and sit it off to the side. And now we'll grab our second color and do the same thing. So I'm just going to lay that in my workstation, curl side up. Roll this guy into a cylindrical tube so that it's about an inch or so in diameter in the center. I'll grab that first curl I made, and we're just going to make a loose X seam side down. And we're going to add this curled X to every single set of ties in our wreath base, guys, so it doesn't matter where you start. Just spread those ties into a wide V. Place the center of your deco mesh X all the way down to the base and give it a couple of tight twists. And we've just added our first set of curls. Let's do one more set together and then we'll speed ahead. So grab your first colored piece of deco mesh and lay it in your work area, curl side up. Roll that guy into a cylindrical tube so that it's about an inch or so in diameter in the center. Grab your clip, pinch that guy in the middle. Grab your second piece of deco mesh, lay it in your work center, curl side up, and you guessed it, roll it into a cylindrical tube so that it's about an inch or so in diameter in that center. We're going to place one curl on top of the other to make an X. You'll come to any set of available ties in your wreath frame. Open that set of ties into a wide V and place that deco mesh curl X right down in the center of that V all the way at the base, and give it a couple of tight twists. Go ahead and add 2 curls to every single set of ties on your wreath frame, and I'll meet you back here. All right, guys, we've got all of our curls added into our wreath base, and look how full this beauty has become. So it's just got a lot of depth and dimension, super great coverage. And now you can add your sign and embellishments. Adding Woodland Ruffles to a pine base. Just because this is pine doesn't mean you can't use it year-round. This is a 24-inch pine base that we fluffed out, and now we'll dive into the deco mesh. We're going to use some shimmery gray and shimmery white 10-inch deco mesh, and we're going to cut 7 pieces of each between 20 and 24 inches in length. You guys are welcome to roll this out and measure it if that's easier for you, but let me let you in on a little secret here, guys. I don't measure. I find it's quicker just to pull my arm straight out in front of me. And I know if I keep my arm in the same spot approximately every time, and then cut at the same spot, my pieces will be essentially the same length, and it just goes much quicker. Let's see how long these guys are. So this is coming right in at 20 inches. So again, between 20 and 24 inches in length. Go ahead and cut 7 pieces of the gray and 7 pieces of the white 10-inch deco mesh, and I'll meet you back here. Once you've got 7 pieces cut of both the white and the gray for a total of 14 pieces of deco mesh, go ahead and bring your pine wreath base back into your work area. We may very well need to cut a few more pieces. Just depends on, you know, how closely you place your pieces throughout the wreath. So if we need more, we'll cut some more. I would recommend that you grab a clothespin or a chip clip. It's helpful for this next step. We're going to add deco mesh cruffles into our pine wreath base, and we're going to secure them down with these pine ties. So to make a cruffle, guys, we'll do a couple of them together, and then we'll speed ahead. You're going to just grab a piece of deco mesh and bring it into your work area, curl side up. If you're new to working with deco mesh loves to fray, so anything that we can do as creators to help prevent that fray is always ideal. So I've laid my deco mesh in my work area curl side up. I just use my bolt cutters here as a weight to keep my deco mesh in place. And at one end, I want you to curl that deco mesh in 2 or 3 times. And what that does is tuck away that raw edge of your deco mesh to keep it from fraying. Once you've curled that a few times, take your clip and just secure that guy in the middle. Spin your deco mesh piece around, and then curl your other end 2 or 3 times. Once you've curled your deco mesh end, then hold that down with your thumbs, and then with your 8 fingers, just walk that deco mesh back into your hand, all the way to the end of your piece. Release that clip and pinch that cruffle in the middle. Should look something like this. And so really what a cruffle is, guys, is a curl on each end and then the ruffle in the middle. And then you're going to keep a hold of your deco mesh cruffle, come to your pine wreath base, and right in the center here, just find 2 neighboring pine ties, place that cruffle all the way down the base between those ties, and then give your pine ties a couple of tight twists to secure that cruffle down. So we've just added our first cruffle. Let's do one more together and then we'll speed ahead. Because we've got 2 colors here, guys, I'm just going to go back and forth. So I'll be doing gray, white all the way around our base. So I've grabbed a piece of our white deco mesh. I'm going to lay that in our work area, curl side up. I'll place something heavy in the middle. And at my first end here, I'm just going to curl that in 2 or 3 times and secure it with my chip clip there in the middle. And then I'll spin my deco mesh around and we'll curl in that other end 2 or 3 times. I'm going to press down with my thumbs and then scrunch and gather the mesh back into my hand to create our cruffle. I'll release that clip, pinch that deco mesh cruffle in the middle, come over to my pine base, and right next to where I left off, I'm going to find 2 neighboring pine ties. I'm going to place this cruffle all the way down to the base between those 2 ties. And then I'm going to give those pine ties a couple of tight twists to secure my cruffle in. So we've added 2 pieces. We're going to follow this pattern all the way around our pine base. And again, depending on how closely you put your pieces together, you may need to cut a few more pieces. That's totally fine. Make it as full as you want. So go ahead and add your cruffles all the way around your base, and I'll meet you back here. All right, guys, we've got our pine base fully loaded with our cruffles, and ironically, the 14 pieces of deco mesh that I had cut in total was the exact number that I needed. That sure doesn't happen very often. And now you can add in your ribbons, signs, and embellishments. Let me show you how to add 10-inch deco mesh into a 5-gallon paint stir stick base. Go ahead and get your hot glue gun plugged in. We're going to use a 5-gallon paint stir stick. I actually bought these from Amazon in a pack of 10, I believe. I like the ones from Amazon better than hardware stores because they don't have the measurement markings on them and they're just a blank canvas for us to create with. So we're going to start out by prepping our paint stir stick. By the way, guys, these are 17 inches in length with our standard pipe cleaners, which is what we're going to use to add our deco mesh into our paint stir stick. You will need a total of 9. So the first thing I want you to do is to take your pipe cleaner and make a loop, almost like an awareness ribbon, so that those legs are fairly long, and then give that a couple of 2 or 3 tight twists. And this loop is actually how we or our customers will be able to hang this on our doors. So we're going to wrap those legs right around this indentation here on the paint stir stick. I'm just going to give that guy several tight twists to really keep that nice and anchored down. And then I'll cut these leftover bits off with my small wire snips. And then I'll just take my finger and push that down flat, just like that. And so essentially then the side with the loop will be the back of your swag, and this is how we can hang it up. And so now we're going to take 2 more pipe cleaners right around where we added our hanger pipe cleaner. We're going to run that underneath, so you want that hanger on the back side. You want those legs of your pipe cleaner to essentially be the same length. And you're going to give it a couple of tight twists off to the side. And then point those guys off to one side or the other. And then we're going to add 1 more pipe cleaner right below that and do the exact same thing. However, this time they'll be pointing the opposite way on that opposite side. Just like that. Now we're going to add 2 pipe cleaners in a similar fashion at the bottom of our paint stir stick. You just want to come up about 1 inch or so from the bottom of that paint stir stick. Then we'll add another pointing in the opposite direction. No need for perfection here, friends. No one's going to see your pipe cleaners. Okay, and now we're going to do the exact same thing in the middle of our paint stir stick. You're welcome to measure that if you feel more comfortable doing so. I'm just going to eyeball it. All right, now that we have all of our doubles attached to our paint stir stick, you should have 2 pipe cleaners left, and we're going to put a single pipe cleaner between each set of doubles, and we want those right in the middle there and pointing straight up. So go ahead and give it 2 or 3 tight twists. Okay, so now we've got all of our pipe cleaners loaded into our paint stir stick. Hopefully your glue gun has had a chance to heat up. So now we're just going to run a couple of stripes of glue right over where those pipe cleaners are attached to our paint stir stick, and that'll just give them some extra stability and keep them from sliding around. Once you've got your dollops of glue added to all of your connecting points where your pipe cleaners meet the paint stir stick, go ahead and set this guy off to the side so it can dry. And our paint stir stick glue dollops are drying. We're going to go ahead and prep our Deco mesh. I'm going to be using 2 colors today. I'm going to use this gray and the white. Again, they're 10 inches in width. And we're going to add 2 Cruffles to every single set of pipe cleaner ties on our paint stir stick. And we've got 8 ties, so we're going to need 16 pieces in total. I'm going to cut 8 pieces of the white and 8 pieces of the gray at 20 inches in length. You can either use a self-healing mat like you see here, along with a rotary cutter, which, by the way, if you're new to wreath making, the rotary cutter is a great tool to add to your toolbox. It's pretty inexpensive, and it lets you cut your Deco mesh really quickly and with nice clean lines. I'll leave a link for this below as well. If you don't have a rotary cutter and self-healing mat for measuring, just grab your ruler and a good pair of scissors. So we're just going to measure out 8 pieces of the gray and 8 pieces of the white at 20 inches in length, and then I'll meet you back here. Once you have all of your Deco mesh pieces cut, go ahead and bring your paint stir stick back to your work area, and go ahead and grab some sort of a clip or a clothespin. That will help you as we make our Cruffles. And so remember, we have got 3 sets of 2 and 2 singles for a total of 8 pipe cleaners on our paint stir stick, and we're going to add 2 Cruffles to every single pipe cleaner all the way up our paint stir stick. So if you're not familiar with Deco mesh loves to fray. So anything that we can do as a creator to help reduce that fray is always ideal. The CRUFFLE method, also known as a Woodland ruffle, is a great way to help reduce and prevent that fray. Go ahead and grab a piece of Deco mesh and lay it in your work area, curl side up. I'm going to place my rotary cutter in the middle just as a little weight here and to keep it from rolling up. And what I want you to do on one end, as you can see, it likes to curl. Go ahead and roll that end in 2 or 3 times to make this little tube or a curl. And what that does is tuck away that cut edge or that raw edge to really help prevent the fray. And then just use your clip to secure it. Then spin your Deco mesh piece around and do the exact same thing on the opposite end. And then we're going to ruffle the middle. So take your thumbs and place it down on that curl that you made, and then we'll use our 8 fingers to walk this Deco mesh, just scrunching and gathering right back into our hand. And then we'll remove that clip and pinch that guy in the middle. And we've just made a cruffle, and cruffle means curl on the end and ruffle in the middle. We're going to come over to our paint stir stick and add that to our first set of pipe cleaners all the way down to the base. We're going to give it a tight twist. You don't need to get too carried away. We're going to add another piece in just a minute, right down at the base. And now we're going to take a white piece of Deco mesh, or the secondary color that you're using, and make our next curl. So you've got it in your work area, curl side up. I'm going to roll that end in 2 or 3 times to tuck away that raw edge and secure it with my clip. I'll spin that guy around. Do the exact same thing, 2 or 3 curls. And now I'm going to scrunch and gather that mesh into my hand to make my cruffle. I'm going to remove my clip and pinch this guy in the middle. We've just made our second cruffle, and we're going to put this right on top of this gray cruffle that we just added. So I'm going to gently untwist that pipe cleaner and add that guy right on top. Now, cinch your pipe cleaner down really tight and give that 2 or 3 tight twists. I'm going to point them up just to get them out of the way. And we've just added our first 2 pieces of Deco mesh into our paint stir stick. I'm going to repeat the exact same thing to the set of pipe cleaners on the right. And guys, because I'm using 2 colors of Deco mesh, I'm going to follow the same pattern. So on my set of doubles, I'm going to put the gray on the bottom and the white on the top. And then for my single pipe cleaners, I'll put the white on the bottom and the gray on the top. So let's speed ahead and add 2 cruffles to every single set of pipe cleaners, both the doubles and the singles. And I'll meet you back here. All right, I've got all of my Deco mesh pieces fully loaded into my paint stir stick, and look at what great coverage that has already given our paint. Remember, the paint stir stick started out at 17 inches in length, and now it's about 22 inches in length and about 11 or 12 inches wide. So let me show you what it looks like from the back here. You can see how this method would also make a great table centerpiece. So if you didn't want to add a sign, you could load this guy up with embellishments and set it right in the middle of your dining room table or your fireplace mantle, and it would be a great holiday addition. The Dollar Tree 6-inch Deco Mesh No Fray Bubble Method. We're going to make our Deco Mesh wreath on a 14-inch Dollar Tree wire frame. For those of you that are new to wreath making, let's have a little bit of Wreath 101. So this is a wire wreath frame. It comes in a variety of different sizes. We nearly always will use on this channel the 14-inch. Again, it came from Dollar Tree. And as you can see, it's flat on the back, so it can rest nicely against your door. And then the top side has a bit of a bevel. There are 4 rings that go around the wire frame. 1, 2, 3, and 4. There are 6 crossbars for stability all the way around the frame. And then the space between each crossbar is what we consider a section. And there are 6 sections across this frame. So let me show you what we're going to use today. I've got 6 rolls of the 6-inch Deco Mesh from Dollar Tree. You're also going to need lots of 6-inch zip ties. You can also use pipe cleaners if you prefer. All right, friends, today we are going to make what's called a Deco Mesh bubble wreath. You're also going to need a standard ruler. And here's what we're going to do, guys. This is going to seem a little strange, so work with me. First of all, if you are new to Deco Mesh loves to fray, and it loves to grab a hold of itself. And the bubble method is a really great method to not completely eliminate the fray, but basically, because there's very few cuts on this Deco Mesh, therefore very few raw edges. And if you've heard me say before, if you're not new to the channel, I'm going to be transparent with you and tell you I don't generally like to work with the Dollar Tree Deco Mesh. It's just a little bit too see-through for my liking, generally speaking, and Fray's more than usual. However, the only exception to my rule is for this particular method, known as the bubble method. And this is just a recipe, guys. You can sure recreate this as you would like to do so. What we're going to do here, this is going to seem strange, is layer our 3 different colors of Deco Mesh right on top of one another. And it doesn't matter what order you put these in, because we're going to be separating them out later, and there won't really be any rhyme or reason. So as you can see, I've taken all 3 of my colors. They're laid nicely on top of one another. And now what I'm going to do at the edge here, I'm going to take my fingers and scrunch and gather this mesh back into my fingers. And so it's nicely gathered. And I've got a little inch or so tail. I'm going to cut off these scragglies. And I'm going to take my 6-inch zip tie, and again, if you prefer, feel free to use pipe cleaners. And we're going to start at any crossbar on the frame, friends. At this point, we don't have a top or bottom, so it doesn't matter which crossbar you start at, just any crossbar. And for this wreath, we're only going to be using the inner 2 metal rings, so we won't use the 2 outsides, just these 2 middle 2. We're going to take this tail of Deco Mesh and place it on our crossbar so that it overlaps one side by a solid inch or so. And then we're going to take our tie and we're going to come beneath this crossbar. And then I'm going to take that zip tie and I'm going to cinch that guy down tight, 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 because this is what we're using to anchor down our mesh. So let me flip that over. You can see that I kind of went catty corner over this crossbar to make sure it doesn't slide around. You'll also need a small pair of snips or a really good pair of scissors so that you can cut off your excess bits of zip tie or pipe cleaners as we go. And I'm going to try to keep, a good 10 inches or so of the mesh rolled out at all times. And so now what we're going to do is have a pile of zip ties or pipe cleaners within arm's reach here, which, by the way, if you do use pipe cleaners, go ahead and cut those guys in half. You don't need the full length, and you might as well, to get the most money out of your product. And our bubbles are going to be 8 inches in length. So what we're going to do is take our ruler, lay it down where we've anchored it, identify that 8-inch mark, and friends, nobody's looking for perfection here. No one's going to measure your bubbles. Once you've identified that 8-inch mark, you're going to scrunch and gather just like we did before. And you'll have to continually roll out your mesh here so that you've got some wiggle room. We're going to come back to the frame and create our first bubble. So I'm going to place it between those 2 middle rings. I'm going to take my zip tie or my chenille stem and run it underneath those 2 rings. And then I'm going to cinch this guy down nearly as tight as I can with just a hair of wiggle room, because before I cinch down my bubble, I need to scoot it all the way over to the left where we anchored it. So I'm just going to push that guy over as far as it'll go and then finish cinching down that zip tie. And I'm going to trim off that excess bit. So we've just added our very first bubble. And again, it's placed between those 2 center rings, and then our zip tie is wrapped around those 2 center rings to anchor that guy down. And we're going to add 7 bubbles per section. So what we'll do for this video, friends, we're going to go ahead and complete the first section together, and then we'll speed ahead. So again, place your ruler on top of your zip tie or pipe cleaner, identify that 8-inch mark, scrunch and gather your mesh together, unroll your rolls of mesh a little bit to give you some wiggle room, come onto your frame, and we're going to take our pipe cleaner and run it underneath rings 2 and 3, those 2 middle rings. We're going to cinch it nearly all the way down. Scooch that guy all the way over, and then finish zipping it down. And we'll trim off our excess bit of zip tie. Maybe, here we go. So we've added our first 2 bubbles. Let's move on to the third. All right, we've just added our first 7 Deco Mesh bubbles into our first section. Your wreath should look something like this. If you notice it's tightly scrunched together at one spot and looser at the other, you can certainly slide them around so that they're equally spaced within that section. And what we're going to do at this point is basically repeat the same pattern all the way around our wreath frame. Now, approximately halfway around, you are going to run out of mesh and need to start a new roll. Just anchor it down just like we did when we started, friends, and continue on with your bubbles. All right, let's get our wreath full of our Deco Mesh bubbles, and I'll meet you back here. All right, I've got my bubble wreath totally filled in, and I added 7 bubbles to every single section. However, friends, and this is not uncommon with Dollar Tree mesh, in my very last section, I've only got 5 bubbles. Because the mesh ran short. So if that happens to you also, it's no big deal. That's just where we will add our bow to help fill in and hide the fact that we're short a couple of bubbles. So this is what your wreath should look like on the front, and then on the back, it's pretty clean. It should look something like this. And our next step is to spread our Deco Mesh bubbles. And so right now we have layered them one on top of another while we were adding them into our wreath. And so now you're just going to work your way around your wreath bubble by bubble and just kind of pull those mesh layers apart. And there's no rhyme or reason to how you do this. It just helps it fill out a little bit more, helps those colors to all shine. And so as you can see, I'm just separating bubble by bubble. And if I pull my orange to the outside on one bubble, then the next one I try to pull it on the inside, and vice versa. I just basically don't want all of my colors following the same pattern. So take a couple of minutes and pull your Deco Mesh bubbles, layers apart a little bit, and then I'll meet you back here. I've just finished separating out all of my Deco Mesh bubbles, and how stinking cute is this? I'm hoping the camera can capture that for you. You definitely see all of the colors peeking through, that browns, orange, and sage green, and yet they all somehow just blend nicely together. Super stinking cute. And so now that we've added our Deco Mesh bubbles, our 14-inch frame is now a 20-inch in diameter wreath. So it's definitely giving it lots of great coverage. This wreath base makes a wonderful wreath, and it also makes a great centerpiece for your table. If you enjoyed today's tutorial, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps my little channel to grow. Thanks for spending time with me today, friends. Happy crafting.